Welcome to our Speaking to Spirit series. Tonight we're going to do somebody a little bit different. We are going to be talking with the spirit that was known as Billy the Kid, a famous outlaw from the Old West. I wrote about Billy in my book, Spirits Speak of Conspiracies and Mysteries, devoted a chapter to him. And I think, as you're about to find out, there's a lot more to the life of Billy the Kid than being killed by Pat Garrett at the age of 19. So, we've been talking with the kid. He asked me to refer to him as William Bonney, which was one of his aliases, which is how we will do it. So without any further delay, let's get started and begin our interview. Connie?
Okay, what was your birth name?
I was born, my last name was McCarty. I was obviously Irish and born in the city of New York.
Why did you leave New York?
Well, my father took off and my mother was not in real good health and we were having trouble living and making it in New York City, so we decided to go west.
So who was Jesse Evans?
Jesse Evans was a good friend of mine when we first arrived out west and when I was a teenager.
What was the reason for your first arrest?
Well, when we arrived out there, we were having trouble making a living as well. So I stole some clothes from a Chinese laundry, and my landlady, we were renting it at the time, and she reported me to the marshal, and I was arrested. So it's not very exciting, but my first run-in with law enforcement was for stealing clothing.
How old were you at the time?
I was around 14.
Sad. How old were you when you killed your first human?
About the same age. I was around 14 years old. I was, obviously there was no drinking age restrictions, and I was in a bar and a drunk tried to pick on me, and we wound up getting in an argument and I wound up shooting him. It was self-defense.
Okay. Why did you get involved in the Lincoln County War?
I was working for an individual, Mr. Tunsil, and he was providing me with a good job. I was taking care of his cattle for him and generally working on the ranch. He got involved with some very nasty individuals who owned the dry goods store in town with whom he was competing. Mr. Tunsil was killed by a sheriff's posse under the pretext that they were enforcing the law. Several of us got together and decided that we would try to avenge his death. And once the shooting started, it escalated and became what was known as the Lincoln County War.
Did you kill Sheriff Brady?
I was part of the group that killed Sheriff Brady. He was hit with multiple bullets, and I know some of them were mine, but I can't claim all the credit.
Okay. Tell us about your deal for a pardon.
Well, things were so crooked in those days. At the end of the Lincoln County War, I was arrested and tried for killing the sheriff. Well, everybody else that got involved basically got a pardon, but they chose me as the fall guy. I was convicted and sentenced to be hanged, and we'll talk about a little bit of that in some of your future questions. But I tried to get a pardon from the governor and he assured me that he would give me a pardon if I testified against certain other individuals at the time. Once I did that, he backed off and refused the pardon. So once again, I got screwed by the officials.
Could you tell us about your escape from the Lincoln County Courthouse?
Well, Garrett and his gang captured us, and after the trial, I was sentenced to be hanged, and I was being held in the Lincoln County Courthouse. I managed to escape, and I had to kill 2 people during the escape. Unfortunately, I was really sorry that I had to kill the deputy that was watching me, but I had no choice because he was going to try to kill me. But the second deputy was very nasty and had been picking on me while I was in jail, and I wound up having to shoot him with his own shotgun. Once I did that, the townspeople really didn't try to stop me, and I escaped from town. But that was really the beginning of the end for me.
How did you slip out of those handcuffs?
I had a double jointed thumb, and I could actually make my hand much smaller. And when they put the cuffs on, they never realized that I had this ability. So when I waited my time, and when the time came that I thought that I could escape, I slipped the handcuffs.
How did you get the gun?
I pulled the gun from the holster of the deputy that was watching over me.
So how many men did you really kill?
I really killed around 9. But keep in mind, some of those people were also being shot by other individuals, like the sheriff, for instance.
Yeah. So were you killed by Pat Garrett, as the story is told?
No, I was not.
So. What happened at the Maxwell farm?
Well, we had been out partying, and I was actually dating Maxwell's sister. And we came back and we thought we would be safe there. But Garrett and his posse had arrived, and we figured he was in the area, but we really didn't realize he was at the farm. Maxwell had slaughtered a cow, and my friend was hungry for some beef. And I warned him that it was dangerous to go out, but he went to the Maxwell farm to try to get some of the beef for our dinner, and when he did, Garrett shot him.
So that's who he killed when he was claiming it was you. Okay, were you wounded at the Maxwell farm?
Yes, as soon as the shooting broke out, I ran to try to help my friend, but he had already been killed. The posse started to open fire at me, and I was hit several places. I had a bullet graze my forehead, and I was hit in the shoulder, but I did manage to escape.
Okay. What did you do after you recovered from your wounds?
I went to Mexico, and I spent some time down there where it was safe. And I thought about what I was going to do, so I assumed another alias, and I actually returned not to New Mexico, but I returned back to the United States and worked at multiple jobs as a rancher. I tried not to get into any trouble because I knew that the potential was there, that if I got arrested again, it would be a real problem for me.
Yeah. Did you ever meet Jesse James?
Yes, actually I did meet him at one time. We talked about me joining his gang, but I felt that was too much notoriety for me, and I had a much better chance to live if I just kind of went my own way.
Yeah. Who was Brushy Bill Roberts?
That was the name that was the assumed name under which I lived in Texas. Actually, I lived for many years under that name, and nobody realized who I was.
Did you ever get married?
I did at one time, but I did not have any children.
Did you know Bill Cody?
Yes, actually I worked for him in his Wild West show for a year or so. He never fully realized who I was.
So what year did you die?
I actually died in 1950.
Why did you decide to make your existence public?
Well, I knew that I had been screwed by the governor of New Mexico with that pardon, and I wanted to try to clear my name, because technically I had still been convicted and was sentenced to be hanged. I thought that if I came forward and told the truth at the end of my life, I would still be able to get the pardon. We tried to do it, but the governor at the time, Bill Richardson, thought it was a joke, and they made a fool of me when I tried to meet with them. So sadly, I died still a convicted killer.
How were you judged when you arrived in heaven?
There were obviously things that I had done in my life that were not as prescribed in the way that you're supposed to live your life. However, these were very, very violent times, and much of what I did was seeking justice or was in self-defense. I never wantonly killed a single person, but if somebody wanted to fight, I was pretty good with a gun, and I won most of the encounters. After my jailbreak in Lincoln County, my fame spread throughout the country, and many stories were made up about me. I never killed 21 men. I never robbed a stagecoach. I never robbed a train. I did rob cattle. I was what was known as a cattle rustler at the time. But I pushed the envelope on what I did in life. But because of the violent times, I was given forgiveness, but that I would have to pay for it in future lifetimes through karma.
So have you reincarnated since you were Billy the Kid?
Yes, I came back and I lived a very short lifetime, and I came back actually as a gang member in New York City, and I was killed at the age of 15, and that was all part of the karma that I agreed to for forgiveness of my life as William Bonney.
So do you have a final message for our viewers?
I would like everybody to understand that a life of violence is not the way you should live your lives. Now that when we are over here, we learn that we are supposed to love one another. However, at the time I lived, there was so much violence in the West, and you had to either kill or be killed. Unfortunately, I was the victim of circumstance. I never sought out fame as a so-called outlaw. I never did the things that other outlaws did. I never robbed. I never wantonly killed. I did work on ranches, and I do admit that I stole other people's cattle. But I can assure you that how you live your life has consequences. I've just returned recently to heaven from that last short lifetime, and I will have karma in still additional lifetimes to pay for what I did. It's much easier to live a good life than it is to pay for your debts in future lifetimes. Trust me, I can tell you all about it. But I thank you for letting me tell my story. Pat Garrett did not kill me. Pat Garrett lied extensively about me. He killed a friend of mine and had him immediately buried to cover his alibi. Not even a marshal can shoot an innocent person in the back and get away with it. Unfortunately, he proved that it was possible. So with those words, I'm going to leave you, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak and hopefully to clear my name somewhat. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, William. Very interesting interview. I thank you for coming through for us, and I thank you for allowing me to write about you in my previous book. So with that, we're going to say goodnight.
And God bless.